Going to school in New York, like it builds a different type of character. And like as much as I understand us like being aware of like social dialogue and being aware of the fact that like you can't say certain things about certain people. One of the things that like I appreciate from my upbringing is like, yo, you could get roasted and like that shit gonna be funny.
I got roasted in 5th grade because I had an afro and no one else did.
Right.
This was like the 80s.
But this is just straight up other black people.
Yeah,
like,
other black
like,
people.
This is straight up like, hey man, we finna flame you because like that's just what we do.
Yeah, it's like, yo, take that hat off indoors. Yo, this is my hair, man. Come on.
Yeah. And like
he was practicing that. He's work. He went home worked on that.
They workshop that joint, right?
Yeah.
So they flamed me. Like it was like, yo, bro, you got roaches on your head. They used to cut my ass.
I'm surprised your generation. Well, I don't know. I feel like the younger generation would be more accepting of that.
But that's why I brought up the whole thing of like being from New York and like being from the hood and like roasting, because like it wasn't that we actually thought something was bad.
Okay.
Like you gotta think, we used to call cute people like, we get your ugly ass about it. Like when we roast people, it's just because that's just banter. That's just fun. It builds character, and like when you do it in those settings of like other black people, it makes the stuff that the outside world can say to you hurt less because you've learned. Like I got to a point where it's like, bro, you can't embarrass me in a roasting battle because ain't nothing you said to me that's gonna be more creative than these motherfuckers that I've been around, boy. Like, boy,
that's been talking about my mama and all.
Yeah. They're how you sitting there thinking about something they said for like 3 weeks. You be like, damn, bro, like, and you get roasted so bad that like it'll sit with you. So when you go out into the world and you hear like the preconceived notions they have about black people, or you hear like the things they say about your appearance or the way you talk, all that other stuff, like it don't even faze you no more because you can't say nothing that hit harder than these people. They were so good and so creative that like that joke will stick with you until you leave that school, until you move.
Have to go to another state. Yeah.
Right. So all that to say, like, I didn't start locking my hair until I had gone through a really like tough, depressive state. I had a lot of stuff going on in life, and I really just needed to like not just reinvent myself, but like learn who I was and how to like interact with the world. And I was like, I want to appear on the outward the way that I feel on the inside. And like, I've always wanted to lock my hair. I think locks look beautiful. I want to do this. And I finally started it in 2016 was when I locked my hair. And you know, you got to go through the ugly phase. But like, as I was going through that, I was also going through the like metamorphosis of like just learning who I was going to be as an adult and how to like move away from like a lot of childish mistakes and like decisions that I was making as a kid, and like learning all this as I'm like trying to advance my career in coffee and all this other stuff. So like it became a very personal thing for me. So like, that's why I brought up the whole like being down here and not necessarily always being around black people, because I moved down here mid-pandemic. It's not like I had like a social group to interact with. Almost everybody I know here is a product of work.
Right.
So there's some days where like I really just go through like, dang, like I should probably, cut my hair, start to present in a certain way. Not because I don't like it, but like just it feels different here. Right. So going back to DC and being like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like when like you around like black folk, and like they kind of pour back into you the same way black people are some of the best at roasting you ever. They make you feel better about yourself than anyone ever could, because their compliments hit differently because there's context involved.
Right.
So like walking down the block and a random stranger I've never seen before in my life is like, yo, your hair is beautiful. Like, look amazing. Oh, I'll feel that a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah, those locks are tight, man. How long you been growing those?
Yeah, and or someone come up to you and they start asking you questions like, yo, so what do you do? Like, what's your hair care routine? And he's like, oh snap! Like I could break this down for you because and like it means something that you're complimenting me in this, because I'm looking at you going, yo, your locks are beautiful, or your style is amazing, and like it's just a different feeling. And like it's funny because like in coffee, I used to have that a lot more often in my early barista days because I worked in some very black places. Like I had black coworkers. I had obviously coworkers of all backgrounds, but like I had black coworkers. that were like going through the trenches with me, working those crazy hours, being in the store, kind of being the foundation to keep a lot of these places going, because that's just what we did. And like, as I got further, higher and higher up in the industry, less people that look like me were around. So it feels great going to like Expo and SCA and all these things after my 2020 routine, and seeing more people that look like me and getting to meet new Black faces for the first time. And like that, I have a connection to them that is, hey, we don't see many of us here. Let's just connect, you know? Right. So
that's what drew me to Drip, you know, to Nigel, man. It's like, what? He's out here doing it. You know what I'm saying? And I hadn't seen anything like that before. You know?
I remember Expo where it would be Lem and maybe one other Black person in the whole.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I look at, I remember that year, it's like iconic to me. That year, you guys, was like, had to be maybe 20, 25 of you all. Like,
oh, you're talking about Nashville 2019,
Oh,
2020,
yeah,
Nashville 2020.
I think I actually like cut and paste myself in that picture and sent it to you.
Oh yeah, you did.
Like, I was so envious of that time, you know? And most of my work, even in university, I was almost always the only other Black person in the room. I don't know, maybe I was just naive, but to me, I didn't look at it as like, oh my God, I'm the only other. Like, I was just kind of, it wasn't until I got a certain age and I got a little older, and then I was one of my first professional jobs. You know, I'm going to date myself again. I didn't watch one day of the O.J. Simpson trial. But the day they were going to announce the verdict, I was working first intern job at some corporate place on Park Ave. They announced the verdict and I was like, not guilty. And I was like, damn. So who did it? Literally, but everybody around me. Now, this is somebody I still never followed up on the OJ trial until like I think Cuba Gooden did a like
show.
And I was like, shit, damn, he did do that shit. but I vividly I remember that day because the looks that I got, and even then that day I didn't comprehend it, but the looks I got, like people were really like angry.
Yeah.
And I didn't compute it then, but I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, they probably think I would be happy that he got off. And it took years for me to really quantify all of that information. But again, I was just really naive about it. And
I mean, but in that era, like there were a lot of Black people that were happy he got off because of the fact that like we're so used to the injustices of the judicial system that like
on the innocent,
that it was, you kind of counted it as a victory to see, even though you believed he did it, that injustice go in the favor of Black people for once. And it's difficult. Like it's a very
difficult is not the word. You may have to edit this.
No, I mean, it's just, it's the truth of it. I'm saying it's difficult because like it's an uncomfortable truth. It's an uncomfortable truth that people felt that at that time. I obviously was not coherent enough of a human to understand this at that age. So like, I can't talk about that, you know, but like, that's just the reality of, like that story. And it's crazy to think that like generations apart, we all have a story like this. Cause for me, that story was, there were two of those instances. First one was George Zimmerman's not guilty verdict. I remember this day so vividly. This is back when I was doing poetry. I had a big competition preparing for Brave New Voices that we were doing that day. And I did the competition. It was like a bunch of teams from a bunch of cities, like all came to New York. We all competed against each other, just like kind of scrimmage to get ready for this competition. All the dudes after the thing was like, yo, let's go play some ball. So we went to the park, we played ball. We started talking about going to this party later that night. We like, yeah, it's rocking. It's like a group of like 30 of us, right? We walk into the train. And one of the people that was there got a phone call, and it was their mom calling them to tell them, yo, I need you to be safe. Don't be outside doing nothing crazy. George Zimmerman just got off. And when I tell you, everybody's mood shifted in that moment. Like, it was ridiculous. And like, it's so wild because like it it really like put into perspective for us, like, yo, this is just how the world moves with us. Like somebody that killed a black child got off and was told they were not guilty for killing a black child that they clearly killed. Like it's not even like the quote unquote OJ situation of like, here's all of the evidence and like we can probably prove we can probably like say he didn't do it. We don't know. No. We know he did it. Yeah. And they're like, nah, it's cool. So like it's wild how that like impacts and like changes the way that we view our interactions world, which makes us have to think every action we do needs to be radical because we are told we need to be some type of exceptional just to exist. The second one was the Michael Brown and Darren Wilson not even getting indicted. Like I remember being in Oakland when the murder happened and like being there and seeing the riots and seeing everything, like people protesting and all the stuff that was going on because it was like, once again, another one of us killed innocently, not deserving. And then this don't even really go to trial. He don't even get indicted. It's just, all right, whatever, keep it moving. Nope. Yep. You know, and then obviously we have George Floyd from the pandemic and all this other stuff. And it's like, it happens so often that our livelihood is up to whether or not people believe we are exceptional enough to stay alive or not. And we don't get justice for it. That it makes just everyday regular living a radical act. And it sucks having to hold on to that reality.
I'm carrying that plus 20 years of like police killing just in New York alone. Because back then it wasn't just access to information where you had...
There were no cell phones.
There were no cell phones, no internet. There was like just something happened in newspapers and they would just kind of, well, you know, I think this is what happened and, you know, we wrote it down in the newspaper, so this is what happened.
And then when brothers and sisters say this happened, it's like, oh, it's just hearsay.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. So I totally feel you on that. It got to a point where I'm just kind of like numb to it.
You were older. You were older and an adult at this time. Do you remember Sean Bell?
Yeah, that's South Jamaica. South Jamaica.
Sean Bell happened. I was living in Laurelton at this time. So like not too far off. Yeah. But I was going to school in Flushing, and I remember the Sean Bell murder happened, and the next day, I'm sitting in my video production class. I was at like a very arts-based school, so we had like weird stuff like that. I'm in my video production class, and I had this African teacher. His name is Mr. Amanichi, and he's just distraught the whole day. And he's just like, y'all know what happened. Sean Bell used to come to this school for this video production class. I used to teach him. And like, it's just a reality we gotta freaking live with, and it's insane, you know? Like, it makes it tough to think of things like, hey, should I cut my hair after, you know, I win the United States Barista Championships because I'm going to be presented in a better light to people if I look like this.
It never even occurred to me,
right,
until this cat brought it up. And this is a respected voice in the community, and I respected this person. And it's like, wow, you coming at me like that? Really?
And they don't even think they're coming at you like that because it's so common knowledge that this is how you need to present to be seen as a professional. That like, hey, I'm going to ask this question, and in my mind, it can be completely innocent, and in your mind, it's going to bring up generations of problems, generations of trauma, because it means something different to us.
Or like when I was working in the cafe on the campus where I got my degree, and a former professor walks in, orders a drink, hand him the drink, and he's like, oh, so this is what you're doing with your degree, and walks out. I was like, wow.
Yeah, man.
Just.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, one of the bright spots of 2020, like the BLM protests and stuff like that was happening in the city, that was the first time, you know, as corny as it sounds, but that was the first time in my life, not even Obama getting elected was like, oh, I think there's going to be some real change. But when I saw, like, the people who were protesting, because like I mentioned earlier, like back in the days, in New York, every time some little kid got killed by a cop or something like that, they would have these marches.
Mm-hmm.
Not a white face the only white faces were the cops that were like lying along the side of the street waiting for somebody to do something so they can start swinging those sticks. But to see the people who actually came out to protest in those BLM marches and people who were getting arrested and getting their heads beat in with those sticks and like white people like surrounding other black folks because the cops had, for some reason, it was almost like cop repellent. If there's another white person in front of them, they just would not. But seeing that and people put themselves on the line and that little girl who got mowed down at Charlottesville, like seeing things like that for the first time in my life, I'm like, okay, I think everybody's in the fight now. Yeah. But the sad thing is if it took 50 years for me to get to a place where I'm like, okay, I think it looks like progress is starting. Mm-hmm. Like how much longer is it going to be before these conversations don't need to be had at all?
Right. And like, the thing that really makes even that level of progress begin is the fact that these things are now on camera.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. Like you guys both brought up like the experience of having to deal with those things and it be just in the newspaper or just hearsay. And like, we know the story, we heard it on the news, but we don't know how graphic.
Yeah.
It's not until like now people can pull out their phones and be like, this is what's going on in this exact moment that has sparked the change because people are seeing it and it's now undeniable, which ironically enough, somehow it still ends up being undeniable in a court of law because they find a way to get off any goddamn way. Right. But it's, if you have eyes and you have any level of compassion, you see this stuff and you go, wow, something needs to be done.
And that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of compassion, lack of compassion.
I think that, I think in general, just the fact that we're still expecting people to have some type of moral, like appeal to someone's moral ground. Like the fact that after all of these years, you're like, well, maybe if we show them how much they're hurting us or how much damage is being done. I'm like, are you still waiting for that to happen? That's mind-boggling to me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We got deep on that.
Yeah, I don't know how we did that because we came in, it was like, yeah, we're going to shoot the breeze. And he brought up cutting locks and then we went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
but
we did.
My bad. I shouldn't.
No. You don't need to apologize. Actually, I think it's great because I think for those that are listening that, are not black, that do not get to sit in the room for these type of conversations that we more comfortably have around our own, it goes to show you how something as small as the seed of like, yo, why'd you grow your hair lead to all of these deeper ramifications. And like, that's the things that we have to think about on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I think that actually starts a really good conversation for us. Nigel, when you first got into coffee, because you started, you said Starbucks at Grand Central, which God bless. I don't know how you did that because
lasted about 3 weeks.
I mean, you got to tell me about Starbucks at Grand Central.
Yeah. Let's start.
Tell
there.
me about that. What's the joke here?
But let me add I'll break that down in 2 seconds. But like, in addition to telling us that story, like, talk to me about what it was like because you started in what year in coffee? 08, 09?
Yeah.
I know what my experience was, and I started it in 2014. So I'd say 6 years back in New York City. As gentrification started to gain its PhD, because that's what the Barclays time was, you were like right during that transitional period where like cafes were a really alienating idea. And before that, it wasn't even something that was even really presented to us beforehand. What was it like being, one of the few in the industry at that time?
I get, and I'm not going to keep bringing up OJ, but I think I was around 34, 35 at the time. I was very naive still in terms like I into these spaces and other than somebody had to do something blatant for me to be like, wow, this guy has a problem. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I almost always I would make excuses for certain slights or certain comments. Mm-hmm. Like I would, I don't know, maybe it's just, it's the way I'm wired, but So that I say that to say, I didn't have a hard time dealing with cafe culture because I was approaching it from the perspective of, I need to get in here, learn this thing, and, because I'm going to make a business out of this. So I don't really care about the hurdles in front of me. I'm going to kind of get over them. I didn't really start, sadly, paying attention to the ramifications of these cafes being popped up in certain like low income neighborhoods that were being gentrified. It wasn't until it started becoming a conversation for like your generation and you guys would, and I was like, let me pay attention to that, because at the same time, like I had my son was born and my daughter was born. I just moved to Brooklyn from Queens for the first time. Technically, we were gentrifying. We were part of that gentrifying because we moved into an extremely like lower income neighborhood in Brooklyn, but that's all we could afford at the time. I'm still working 2 and 3 barista jobs, trying to come close to the kind of lifestyle I had when I was actually making a decent living. And so I think sadly, to answer the question, I think I didn't make a clear distinction until, I want to say maybe like 6-7 years ago. And even then I was still kind of like, is this really a thing? It wasn't. It's like
Yeah. I think so. I think you bring up a very like important point of like, I have to survive in this. I have to thrive. So like, I kind of turn off my sensors to all of this stuff. And like that's me talking about it from like this newer age. I'm younger than you guys, like where race and like race relations is a conversation that we've had a lot more often as I grew up. But in that era, it was more like the givens. Like if you remember like geometry class,
Exactly.
like, hey, here's your given, prove this. Like the given was these things are all here. So we're just not going to talk about it. We just need to like move past it.
Yeah.
And like, that's why respectability politics, you need to talk this way to the police. You need to present yourself this way. Don't sag your pants. Don't like wear your hair like this. Don't have visible tattoos, yada, 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 were things that like elders preached to my generation because these were just knowns to y'all because, like ain't nothing you could do about it.
Yeah.
I had to turn those receptors off like in my time coming up in the industry because I just needed to like make it to a point where I could have a career that would be sustainable. And one of the really big instances of that for me, I remember this one cafe I worked at. I'll leave it nameless. I won't even say where because it'll be really easy for people to figure it out. But I had worked at this place for over a year, never called out, was 50, 60 plus hours a week. I went out to a party one night and I got a little too drunk at the party, passed out at the party, like just was done. And I woke up and I had to open the next day. I was planning to show up for like a couple of minutes. I don't know. I enjoyed myself. I passed out. I was knocked out there. But I woke up and I was like, they were like, yo, what time you got to be at work? And I'm like, 15 minutes ago. Hopped in an Uber, took off, right? Bro, I showed up. I walked in. They like, obviously, like some people kind of scrambled to figure stuff out because I hadn't shown up. And it was like not something anyone expected because I'd never been late before. I don't like do anything like that. And I like walking, I'm super proud. I'm like, yo, man, I'm so sorry. Here's what happened. Like I'm telling the straight up truth to the owners because like, yo, this never happens, but like it happened. And like, I'm just going to be forthcoming about it. That happened. The party was a Saturday. It happened on a Sunday. I worked every day the rest of the week because I was on the schedule, and they brought me like halfway through my shift on that last day, pulled me to the side, was like, you showed up drunk. You were drunk, so you technically showed up hungover. You were late. You overslept an open shift. We're letting you go. And like in a vacuum, totally makes sense. I screwed up. I have to take accountability.
That doesn't make sense.
No, we're gonna get there. I have to take accountability for that. I screwed up, and that's a relatively big screw up for somebody that like they have like high expectations for. Like I'm on the track of like real management and like running stuff. Like I get it, and then I'm like chopping it up with some of my coworkers there, like former coworkers now, and everybody got at least one of these stories, and are still working there. Obviously, like let's be real about the difference between me and them. We know what that is. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, oh yeah, another instance of I cannot make mistakes. I have to be exceptional or nothing less, or I can't survive here.
Yeah.
it's that phrase we're taught growing up, you got to be twice as good to get half as much.
Yep.
You're not afforded the same amount of grace. So a part of everything being a radical act is understanding that your room for error and your room for stumbling and growing pains is much smaller than most. So to survive not only in, you know, coffee, but in almost any space of professionalism as a Black person requires you to understand that you have a way shorter leash when it comes down to screwing up.
Wow. I actually almost felt like the mascot sometimes, not necessarily not in a derogatory term, but
I think so, but I'm gonna let you go. Go ahead.
Where I feel like I would do things and I'm like, my bad. They're like, oh, don't worry about it, Nigel. You're good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh wow, he's just cool with that. And you know, they would let certain things ride. So, but looking back, I'm thinking now is like, oh, I guess they did. It's almost like they were tripping over themselves to make sure that I was comfortable in the space.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, maybe the value was having me there physically, but that's me, older version, looking back and saying, oh, no wonder they let that ride. You know.
Yeah. If you're there, it is the appearance that this place is cool. This place is for people to come. Because a lot of times, like once again, let's go back to gentrification in New York. You wasn't opening cafes in the financial district if you were, you know, a transplant that just moved there, unless you had like $1 billion. Like you were opening up in the hood as you knew the hood was eventually going to be converted into one of these upscale, like niche places for transplants to come move to. So you had to at least appear like, hey, we're socially conscious and we got like we got Black people that are cool with us, and like I have a Black friend thing pretty much. So like I know some places that were really, really gracious to Black employees for that reason. I also know that most of those places are gracious like that because they had the experience of not being gracious, and someone called them out, it caused problems, so on and so forth. So the next one that showed up got a longer rope. I didn't get that experience at that spot that I was at, but I do know that it's kind of weird because like on either end of that spectrum, it's still a uncomfortable, like added pressure type feeling for us because we are constantly perceiving like, hey, how does someone else perceive me in this moment? We have to constantly consider that, and it kind of handcuffs a lot of our actions because we're thinking about how it comes off more than like what the action itself is, you know?
Yeah.
Like rather than, hey, am I going to be good at this thing? Like, am I going to enjoy it? Am I going to learn? Like, am I going to, you know, all that stuff is like, well, how's someone going to see me if I do it?
Yeah.
I think it's a blessing I wasn't cognizant of that. I was like, I need to get to payday. Yeah.
I think I was the same, you know, as you, Nigel. Because, I mean, down here in the South, it's rare that you see Black people in coffee. I mean, I can count them on my hands right now. I mean, we've got, Tyler and Ian and John Dixon out there.
Sydney,
Tracy Gill is still, is she still in coffee?
I don't know. Bro, I don't know. Boy.
But yeah, so it was kind of like I was, you know, I went to a predominantly white school. My high school was predominantly white. So it was, you know, ingrained to be naive or not just see it or tune it out. And then, of course, all the roasting growing up in the community kind of prepares you for all the BS that you're going. Yeah. And you kind of tune them out because they're nowhere close to the embarrassments back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. And then if you do acknowledge it, then you have to kind of deal with it. So it's almost better to kind of just be almost oblivious.
I remember in high school, I had this one teacher. They'll remain nameless also, but got into it. They was always like really combative with me. We were never cool. And one day I showed up to class early, wanted to have a conversation because we had like a really uncomfortable interaction like during our seminar the day before. And I was like, hey, like, you said such and such. That wasn't cool with me. Obviously, a white teacher. I was like, yeah, that wasn't cool with me. Like, I really didn't like that. I'm just like coming to you like respectfully, like, hey, can like we address that? And they were like, I don't need to listen to you. In this class, we are not equals. You were my subordinate. I'm like, nah, you said some like wild, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, no, we need to discuss this. And they was like, nah. And then after they like completely shut this down, they didn't rock me. They said some other really flagrant stuff to me like 10 minutes later in front of the whole class. Did not go well. I was very blessed that I went to like a pretty diverse school and had some other teachers and principals and counselors within the school that looked out for us. That like I got sent to the dean's office for my reaction to this, and then like as everyone did their investigation and found out, they were like, nah, this person was wilding. And then down the line, I found out that teacher got fired a couple years later because they continued to do some really racist stuff. But like that's the type of stuff that we just grew up with as like commonplace knowledge. Like, there's gonna be some people that's like this, and the world may not penalize them for them being that way. You have to adapt and adjust to make sure that you can survive around those type of people.
You had counselors and support in your school?
Well, I went to
that makes no sense.
We got about a 20-year gap between the schools we went
but
to.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I went to like one of the bigger name schools within New York. Like I went to Brooklyn Tech. So like I went to a school where we were all expected to be excellent, and then like the black professionals that ended up in the school, teachers, counselors, aides, assistant principals, all that other stuff, like they understood like what it meant to be black and in these places, and like how hard you had to work to get into them, even just off of the fact that they had to work as hard as they did to be able to be someone that's asked to like represent that place and work there. So there were a lot that did look out for us because they knew what it meant to be there. So,
man, I had a racist band teacher, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I was probably the best clarinet in that class, and always had first chair. And we had this thing where you could challenge the chair above you at the end of the week.
Just the plot for Drumline.
Yeah. And for what?
Just the plot for Drumline.
And, I would get challenged. I was like the only black kid in the clarinet section, and I would get challenged every week, and I'd always win. And so the band teacher, Miss Nelson, she was like, you're so good at clarinet. Why don't you try alto clarinet? Because we need someone on alto clarinet. I was like, all right, cool. I'll try alto clarinet. So I did really well at alto clarinet. She was like, you know what? This is in 7th grade. She was like, you're so good on alto clarinet. Why don't you try bass clarinet? I was like, all right, cool. I'll try bass clarinet. Excelled at bass clarinet. And she was like, you know what? You should try contrabass clarinet. I was like, all right, cool. I'll try that.
I had no idea there was this many clarinets.
Yeah. Now, contrabass is like crazy big. You have to sit in a tall chair because it's like this tall. And it takes a lot of air. And I was this skinny little kid back in 7th and 8th grade. And I just couldn't do it. So there was another kid who was really good at contrabass and bass clarinet, and he was first chair. So she was like, well, just go back to bass clarinet, and you could be second chair. So that was her way of removing me from first chair in clarinet and having the white students.
Yeah, had to find a way to find a
First,
flaw.
she tried to get me to quit. She forced these other instruments on me. And I didn't think about it at the time.
You never do.
Yeah, but in hindsight, like in high school, I had an awesome band teacher. He respected everyone, black, white, whatever. And it was only then that I realized what she was trying to do. And I was like, that's messed up. I was just this little kid in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, trying to come up and learn from this woman who didn't really want me there,
Yeah, because in a school setting, it's people that like are supposed to be teaching you, but like they want it to look like they want their representation and their output when the metrics are put in front of like their higher ups to look how they want it to look. So like they wanted to get the right like faces in front of them to show, hey, not only am I good at this, I got like these people that's good at this, and like you'll seem like that success story they brought along, not knowing that you've always been as good as you were at it. Like it's that happens. In the professional world, it's a lot of, let's see how much I can extract out of you without compensating you properly. Like I think of the places I've worked at where
where
done.
we worked at.
I wasn't only gonna talk about that place, but we gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna talk about that. You know why not? Wow, but like there's some places where like you got 17 job titles and you got one paycheck. And that one paycheck ain't even really all that much. I remember there were places that I learned a little bit of everything at it and like could do absolutely everything in the building because it was like, well, you figured out how to do this. Let's see if you could do this. And let's see if you do this. And let's see if you could do this. And let's see if you could do this, this, and this at the same time. And if you could do all those things at the same time, you know, we could pack however many hours you're going to be in here and like give you, like, you know, something to do at every given moment. We ain't gonna pay you no more, but hey, it's experience.
Yeah.
We pay you in exposure, like how they tell artists, you know, like there's so much, like how much can we extract out of you and benefit from you without rewarding you for it or like compensating you fairly for it. And so many.
Or convince you that it's good for exposure.
Yeah. That was like the overall overarching trend in like the early aughts with coffee shops.
Yes.
Oh, come to a trial shift. Like you working like 2 or 3 weeks.
We're gonna see if you a good fit, bro. I worked a
We're
trial
a
shift.
good fit.
I worked a trial shift at a place and was moving. And they was like, yeah, like great. We like they ended up hiring me, but it was like, wait a minute. I just bust my behind and did not get paid for today. Like I just came in and, you know, like rocked it on your busy weekend and you got free labor because I needed to prove to you that I knew what I was doing.
Right.
And like in most fields, you don't have to constantly prove like that you know what you're doing. Like if you know, like if you work as a doctor, you don't come into the office every day having to prove to people that you know how to like diagnose patients. Like you do it as your job. But like a lot of times in these spaces for us, it's like, do you actually know what you're doing? Were you just lucky? Are you just a diversity hire? Like what is it? Like you gotta showcase so much excellence just to exist and do the same thing that other people are just given the opportunity for because they are a culture fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So both of you guys are owners of a company, cafes, roastery, so on and so forth. What has it looked like for y'all to kind of undo that? Because I know that, you know, I'm not an owner or anything, but like I've worked in positions where I've been a people manager and like I've had to like interact with people and I'm always hyper conscious and aware of trying to make sure people don't have to go through the same traumas that I did. Because a lot of times it's people going, this is how I paid my dues, so this is how I'm going to make sure the people that come up after me pay their dues because this way I know they're capable to deal with it because they went through X, Y, and Z. What does it look like for y'all, like being people that are responsible for kind of changing what the previous culture was and like making it a more like comfortable and inclusive workplace environment?
I mean, for me, it was the complete opposite because I literally went into it saying, I'm not going to treat people the way I was treated. Like for me, I've worked for so many people who took advantage of me and made assumptions based on what they thought I could do. So and in my head, I'm like, bro, I could have, you know, you had such an amazing resource that you just squandered because you didn't want to give me the opportunity. So I think that's why I have so many great people now because I could care less what you look like. I really don't even want to see your resume. I just want to talk to you, see if you're a decent person and how passionate you are about coffee. I think the proof comes, if you aren't qualified, it'll come out in the wash anyway. But yeah, I mean, literally, if you go to any of the cafes and look behind the counter, you've seen like I think I said it earlier, you will not see a more diverse.
Yeah.
And that's not because I'm intentionally saying, okay, I need 2 women, I need an Asian, it's whatever comes, we'll make it work.
I remember I was going through contract negotiations with an old company I worked with, and I had, like I said, it's one of those, you got 17 job titles, 1 check. And I thought that they were gonna, you know, bump it up when it was time to renegotiate. And it was like, no, like take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
And I was like, I'm gonna leave it because I ain't got no choice but to bet on myself right now. And who knows, there's probably a better opportunity out there with what I am capable of doing, what I've learned thanks to being in this space. And I was like, all right, cool. So I'm gonna leave. And like I put in a 6-week notice. That's the type of stuff you got to do as a professional. I put in a 6-week notice, and they spent like all 6 of them weeks being like, yo, you should stay, man. We really like you here. And you know what's crazy? They did that like every day. That offer didn't move a singular cent.
Yeah.
They was like, you should stay. Like we ain't gonna give you no more, but like
you
we
should
like
stay.
you. You should
Yeah,
stay.
you should
Like
stay here.
you probably not gonna find a better opportunity than this. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna figure it out.
We really like you, though.
Yeah. And like
And what you both mentioned, the same word, opportunity. And that's what I wanted to present to people because I've had great opportunities in coffee. Once I got those opportunities, I was taken advantage of, but I got those opportunities.
Exactly. That exact experience.
And I can manipulate that opportunity into what I wanted to create in this space.
Without
in this
exploitation.
industry. Right.
Yep.
And so I wanted to do the same thing with Black and White, create opportunities. And again, like you said, have conversation with people and find people that would fit, the company and figure out a way to give them a salary to relocate from New York to North Carolina, that's what I'm trying to do with Black and White.
And like, I think one of the things that stood with me, like a lot of times there's a lot of betting on myself and hoping it works. Cause like, everything's got to be a radical act. Everything's got to be this like huge leap of faith as who we are in order to make the strides we want to make in professional settings. And like, it wasn't until this opportunity, it wasn't until I did what I did on competition stages and like got an opportunity to really like showcase what I've learned that like even like that old boss that spent 6 weeks trying to convince me to stay but not changing that number come back to be like, hey man, I gotta admit you was right. I'm glad you bet on yourself. And like on some real like, I'm glad you bet on yourself. Like we fumbled that. It should have went differently, but like you're in the right spot and like having that validation,
Always bet on Black.
Hey man, you remember Chris Tucker and Rush Hour 2? This one's for Mandela. No, but seriously, man, like
they're doing a part 4.
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke, but they're doing a part. Yeah,
I thought Chris Tucker was done.
Do you know if y'all understand how much I love the Rush Hour? I might quote that movie like once or twice a week, like any of the movies. You never. Who think you kidnapped Chelsea Clinton?
See, now I have to. If they're coming out with 4, I'm gonna have to watch them all.
Yo, my son will fall down in the house. I'm like, damn, he ain't gonna be a Rush Hour 3. Oh man, I'll be having a field day, man. But no, seriously though, like it's.
Chris Tucker.
It's just like ultimately the thing is like we have gone through so many of these trials and tribulations to get to a point in this industry. And to be honest, like I'm not at the point that y'all are. Y'all own companies. Like I'm still growing and learning. I'm also, 15 to 20 years younger than the both of you. And I learn so much from you guys every time we interact. And I'm grateful for that. And all I hope that I can do in my time in the industry is make it so that the people that come up after me have different like growing pain stories. Like we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to screw up. But like, I want to make sure that the screw ups and the things that people experience aren't as debilitating as what could have been for us if we didn't have the mentalities or the mindsets that we had to get us to this point, or we didn't have the obliviousness to what was actually happening around us. And we're just able to be stubborn and keep going forward. Like, you know how many great people I know left coffee already?
Right. Yeah.
Like how many great Black coffee professionals I have learned from to be able to be in the spot that I'm in right now, where I'm like, damn, like if any of these people would have took a chance on you, you'd be a million times better than me. Straight, like just straight like that. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm some like immaculate coffee professional that knows more than everyone, because I fucking don't.
Right.
But I know some people that like, they left this shit and left so early, and they could have been game changers.
Yep.
So how do I make sure if I'm going to be in this industry and I'm going to meet people that are passionate about this coming up in it, how do I make sure those game changers are here to change the game?
Well, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah, because owning is not the only.
Oh yeah,
finish line.
I'm definitely not gonna own no business. Like, not I thought that, and then I was like, wow, I don't want to do that. Full transparency, I don't necessarily know if in 5 years I will still be full time in coffee. I do think that like I'll probably be working at Black and White as long as I want to be in coffee, unless like something else pops up. But I do think that like I will always have a connection to it. Like I think that even with like some of the other things that I do in my not Black and White time that I enjoy, if those ever became a lucrative opportunity, there's still connections and work that I would like to still be able to do for Black and White if allowed to by you guys' companies, you guys' choice, obviously. But like my purpose and the things that I want to do, I say it in regards to coffee right now because that's where I work. But what I value within the world and what I believe my purpose is within the world does not change with the industry.
Right.
So like being able to make it so that other Black professionals can come up and live their life and do the things that they want to do, reach the heights they want to reach or don't want to reach. Cause I told you my whole like Black averagism thing, like that endeavor that I'm trying to go for, that ambition exists no matter what I'm in, no matter what it is that I'm doing.
Right.
So that's an everyday task. And I just hope to, be able to be a conduit to allow that to happen for people. I hope to be able to have people learn from my mistakes and make their own that are not as grand. I hope to be able to be like helpful to people and just like exist in the world with a good heart. Of course, the reality of it is I have children, I have a family, I have loved ones to take care of. So, money is going to be something. Mm-hmm. Having money isn't everything, but not having money is everything. Like there's still some realistic like expectations that I have to put in place in order to be able to take care of my loved ones. But like my ultimate goal is really just to be a good person and constantly get better every day and like make it so that no matter what your walk of life is, no matter what your background is, like as you continue to be a better person within the world, as you continue to grow within the world, that opportunity is there because we all are capable of such beautiful, amazing things if we are allowed the opportunity to blossom into it.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised the opportunities that come to you when you walk in that space. When you walk in that space and you're present in that space.
I mean, I'm sitting here at one right now.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think I'd be working for Black. Did I ever tell you the story of the first time I applied to Black and White?
You applied?
Uh-huh.
What?
So, during that
I didn't hear this.
During that time span that I was leaving that company, my partner and I decided, all right, you're not gonna work there anymore. Let's see if an opportunity pops up in the area we're living in, and let's also put out some feelers in a couple of other cities that we'd like to live in, where we have family: New York, Michigan, North Carolina. So made some applications in New York, some applications in Michigan, some places out there, and then application here.
Where did this application
go?
Well,
not an application, but like I shot an email out. This is, now mind you remember you talked about your email and you was like, I couldn't even respond to this.
Yeah.
Like I shot an email and this is like in the early days of Black and White because this is like 2018. So you guys are only like a year old at this time.
Wow.
So like you and Kyle were stretched really thin doing a million different things that like it never got a response. And like not something I've ever held on to negatively or anything like that. But like that was my first like shot out there of like, let me try, because once again, me being on the outside, I have a perception of what I think this place is that is different than what it actually was.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, cool. This is a place where if I'm here, I'm going to be respected for my acumen within the industry. I'm going to be able to grow and like get these opportunities to be a like more tenured and more like respected coffee professional. I met you a couple of months later, actually, through Glittercat.
Yeah.
And then Black Coffee panel that Michelle Johnson put on, and got to know you through the competition and so on and so forth. And this opportunity popped up when you guys offered for me to, start working for you. And like, I sit here sometimes and I think about like back then when like you guys were stretched thin and I don't have this context, but like I didn't get a response, you know? And like I said, not something that I hold on to here, but just like just thinking of like how far you have to travel to get to whatever you think your destination is. And like that's why I want to be able to create spaces where those stories aren't as common. Like as an employee here, how do I build this place or at least my part of the process of building this place to where like things like that don't go unread because like we've built such a sustainable program that like will catch even the like, I'm not a tenured coffee professional, but like this place intrigues me and I'm coffee curious, as we like to say, and like get an opportunity that way. A person with a good heart that is just enthusiastic about it, that has the acumen to learn it, because that's ultimately all we are ever looking for. Good people, well intentions, capacity to learn, capacity to grow. And you know, like even back at the most grassroots of it, we've all worked at cafes where they say, I'd rather hire a new barista than someone that's been working in the industry because this way I don't have to like untrain bad habits. I can just teach you up from the ground. And like the reality of it is like those untrained people, like they won't know where the door is to walk in for the first time. How do I make it so that whatever step of this you are in, when you cross my path or you cross the path of places I have access to, it is a safe, enjoyable, and fruitful opportunity for you.
Well, you definitely landed in the best place. I mean, I remember when he was like excited about the idea of working. He's like, yeah, I think it might happen. I was like, it should happen. Like you got the you got like 4 or 5 accounts before you even left New York. I was like, it should happen. But yeah.
Dude, I was running around like, Kyle, how are we going to make this work? Darren, we got to make this work. We got to get him down.
And I appreciate y'all for that, man. And like, you know, once again, we talk about like how we're perceived in the outside world. And like, I always have days where like, I don't feel like I am doing enough. And like, I try to check in with you and Kyle as much as possible. Like, what can I do better? Like where I'm at, like, not to say that I'm ever perfect, but because like, I know internally, I always feel that imperfection. I always feel that like pressure to be the best version of myself. And sometimes we can't, life happens, you know, like my father being murdered, my children being born, and I have to, you know, tend to young babies, and like being around people that have had similar lived experiences in some way, shape, or form that allowed them to hold grace and compassion.
Yeah, you have to extend grace. You have to. That was the first thing I learned working in coffee. Jane Brown, the owner of Daily Ground, she told me to be successful, you have to take care of the product and you have to take care of the people on both sides of the counter. You know, your customers and more importantly, your staff, because they're the front facing people of your business. They're taking care of your business. They're running your business. And you have to extend that grace, you know, because life happens, you know? And if you can't extend grace, then you probably shouldn't be a business owner.
Right. But when you are not a business owner and you have experienced plenty of places where you were not extended grace, it's not something you ever forget.
Right.
And I think about that when I think of the people that we come into contact with, because it's like they probably aren't experiencing the grace that I may be experiencing now. So I have to be even more conscious of this to make sure that they get an opportunity to see that this is different. And like, it doesn't have to be the learning pains and the experiences that we all had to get to where we are now. Like, you shouldn't have to pledge in the same way. Like, you ain't got to like, you know, get lashes and go through the trials. Like, if you're good at this, you learn it and you take the time. It should be a comfortable opportunity for you to grow and be better.
Right.
That's what this should be. And you know, like it's never perfect, but you're always trying to just be better than you were the day before and make things better for people than it was the day before. And you constantly just make progress and steps forward. And that's all I'm ever trying to do.
Right.
It comes with maturity though. I mean, and clearly you're already there. So
no, it's a journey. I'm not there. I might sound better than, you know, what I might sound like as an 18-year-old. But like when I reach you guys' age, I'll probably sound better than I sound right now. I'll probably have learned things, made different types of mistakes that have made me better for that moment. And that's all I ever really want, is for people to have the space to do that safely. Of course, consequences are real. You have to learn from things. You have to take some bumps on the road. But like, just like parenting, you always want like the bumps that your kids to take to not be as rough as the ones you have.
Yeah.
You just try to make the world marginally better.
As I get older, especially with all that health stuff, I've been trying to be more mindful of the present, because once it's gone, it's gone. Mm-hmm. And then you're thinking, oh, I could have done this different if I would have paid attention. So a lot of times I spend my day driving around to the cafes, checking on people, just filling them out. What do you need? What do you want? What's going to help you get better at what you're doing? How is your life? How are you feeling? And I think that's a responsibility of ownership, because you're supplying a livelihood for people, and that includes checking in with them. You have to be. I mean, with all the stresses of the day, of your life, you have to be mindful of what's happening, because this time, once it's gone, you can't get it back.
Right.
So that's what I've been trying to do, trying to be better at being mindful in the present, what's happening now, and especially with kids. The kids grow up so fast, and then
I just went to a 5th grade graduation. My daughter is going to middle school in a couple of months, and I'm sitting here like, holy hell, when did I get old? Because like I remember when my work ethic and all the things that like I did came from the fact that I needed to take care of this baby, that like I was way too young and way too irresponsible to know what to do properly.
So she's 10?
She's 10, turning 11.
Turning 11.
I was just like, what the?
So in 7 years, she's going to be an adult.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I gotta sit with the reality of like, dang, them first 10 years, like I can think of all the things I wish I did differently and wish I did better.
Yeah. And
like, I can't change that, but I'm constantly striving to be better every day.
Yeah.
And like, now I have younger children.
And in
like,
7 years, they'll be in public school.
And I'm sitting back like, wow, like thinking of, okay, cool. Now as my younger children go through this experience, they have a completely different version of me than the version I was when my daughter was their age. And like, I constantly have to like grapple with that battle. And it's like, I think of that when I think of, how I'll be within this industry or within any industry as someone that is trying to open doors for people, because so much changes in that time. Technology changes, knowledge changes, philosophies on how we just interact with a space change. And as the information changes, your mindset changes. As you go through certain things, you learn what things are necessary for growth and what things could be done differently. Things get easier, things get accomplished faster, so on and so forth. There's more nuance to it. And all I really want is to make sure that those people that are coming up in a different generation than I am, or even in the same generation, just on different timelines than me, have an opportunity to have less regrets than what I may have had at that time. Word, we got deep today again. I don't know how the hell we keep doing this.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, 95 plus.
Yeah, man. So Nigel, thank you so much for coming out here.
Yeah, hanging out with us all day, man. That was dope.
Yeah.
This is a gift. It truly is.
Oh, we're glad that we've been blessed with this space from some great people. We're blessed that we get an opportunity to talk to you and have you share your stories, share your input on things. And like, this is the second season of this podcast that we like had a random thought of like, hey, let's try this and see what happens. And we'll see where it takes us. And we just hope that like what we are saying out here also ends up being beneficial to people down the road, So thank you for being a part of that journey as we figure it out as well.
Heck yeah.
I think this is one of those things that people don't realize they need until they hear it. because that's how it was for me. It wasn't until I heard you two talking, I was like, yeah, man, this is what's up.
It wasn't until we started talking that I went, I needed this, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it was an idea that we flung around for a few months, and like Lem was recovering, and like we talked about, like, hey, when he gets back, we'll do it this way. And then like we get in the room, and then
I got to shout out somebody.
Go ahead.
Andrew Wagner.
Yes, sir.
I got to shout him out.
My dog.
Because it started with a conversation with him. He was like, we were talking about coffee. Andrew is our producer, engineer. We were talking in Roseville, and I was telling him, we were talking about coffee or something, and he was like, yo, have you ever thought about a podcast? And I was like, well, kind of, maybe, no. And that turned into 95 Plus.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
So big shout out to Wags.
Conversation with Andrew happened, and then your conversation with me happened, and then like all of our collective visions and thoughts of like what it would be like kind of just fell into a melting pot, and now here we are. I'm sure it's different than any one of us individually like saw it being, like when we first like brought up the idea.
Yeah.
I hope we're all happy about it, and I hope like the people that are listening and the people that it will reach like take something from it and like feel like it's useful, you know, like you can tell me shut up at any time, anybody like in the world. If you don't want to hear us talk, like just tell me shut up and cool. I'll get out the way and stop being white noise to y'all. But like, you know, like just hope we're, you know, bringing some type of light and positivity and hoping that things are moving in the right direction. So yes. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Lem, for this opportunity. Thank you, Nigel, for being here.
Wu-Tang forever.
Appreciate you.
Wu-Tang forever. Wu-Tang's for the kids. Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to F with. You know it all. But lastly, like we said, this new season, you guys are going to start seeing some new stuff out of us. We do want to hear from you guys more often. Tell us your thoughts on episodes you're hearing. Tell us things that you think would be cool. Tell us people you want to hear from and want to learn from.
Share the website. Share the podcast with people you think could benefit from what
in
we're talking
coffee,
about.
out of coffee, don't matter. Like,
doesn't matter.
You know, we just trying to. We're not trying to turn this into like some crazy lucrative. We're making $1 million off a podcast. We're not trying to get a deal with Sirius XM or nothing. We just hoping we spread some positivity to people. So like, let's do that.
Word.
95 Plus Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. It's your boy Anthony Ragler,
Lem Butler, and
Nigel.
Yeah.
All right, that has been another recording of the 95 Plus Podcast. We'll see you all soon. Peace.
2 times.
Thank you, guys.
Sir.